there's only one place to start, and it's not going to be with Ezra Taylor and Willie Hutchinson's knockabout I just had on another show. We're going to start, of course, with the huge fight on Saturday night between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. And I want to start specifically with an analysis of Conor Benn's performance.
I thought it was a very calculated performance, with the emotional pressure that he had going into that fight, the way the last fight went. He had to dig deep. He showed a lot of character in that last fight. But in this fight, it was calculated. He was taking his time. He was taking the opportunities at the right time. Very good performance, taking nothing away from him. There's a lot of talk about Chris Eubank Jr. and where he was at. But in the build-up to this one, we all thought Eubank was back to his best. So, yeah, I thought it was a first-class performance.
Duke, what did you think of Conor's performance, full stop?
I think it's hard to gauge, to be fair. I think it's hard to gauge given what Eubank brought to the table, and the performance that Eubank gave. I mean, obviously, Conor Benn's gone out and he's done a job. He had a job to do. He's gone out, set his stall out, and he went out and he done it. And I suppose if you look at it like that, then it's a good performance on his part. But given what was actually coming back,
yeah. Were you surprised, Paul, about the control that Conor exhibited at all times? I mean, obviously, 10 million quid from the first fight adjusts one's attitude, doesn't it, perhaps, if those are the numbers that we're led to believe that these fighters were getting paid. But there was a much calmer, more balanced, more, not sedate, but managed emotionally control from Conor, which then manifested itself in the fight, and he talked about it. But were you surprised that that was the approach that he took? Or that he could, in fact, do that approach?
Yeah, I said before the fight, I fancied Conor Benn because of what I saw in the first fight. Yep. Not trying to make this about predictions or whatever, but after the first round like that, where you're out jabbing someone like Chris Eubank, who's got a brilliant jab, he's probably walked back to the corner and think, well, that was easy. And the next round's probably going to be the same. Why change it and why mix it up? I think he was after a bit of a fight, Conor Benn, but he boxed really well. And there's a lot of negativity about Conor Benn recently just because of how bad Chris Eubank was on the night. And I echo them sentiments, definitely. But he did box well, and he stuck to the game plan. He looked big, he looked strong, he looked sharp, and his jab was really good, and I felt the jab was key in the fight for Conor Benn. I literally posted on Twitter straight away after the first round, Conor Benn can't miss with the jab, and his jab was brilliant. He was landing at will, and that set everything up after that then for him. But I thought all in all it was a good performance for Conor Benn, and we'll obviously get to Chris Eubank next.
In a second. Spencer, would you advocate for this new controlled balance? I mean, part and parcel of Conor and the thought process about Conor, insofar as we've seen enough from him over his career and the levels that he's fought at, is his ferocity and sometimes the abandon of controlling that emotion. Do you think that this was a game plan solely for the circumstances of this fight, or you think it's the way that Conor should present himself and manage himself for every fight going forward?
Yeah, it's the way that he should present and manage himself moving forward, because a big problem in Conor Benn's makeup is controlling those emotions, and we saw that in the first fight. Sometimes the emotions take over, the game plan, and that's a big problem. But he done it there, and look, taking nothing away from the performance, yes, Chris Eubank Jr. was absolutely terrible, looked like a totally shot fighter, to be fair. I think that making that weight had clearly taken its toll on him, and maybe probably long-term as well. I think that was completely evident. He was falling short with the jab. He looked like he was walking through treacle. He looked weak as a kitten. So it was a terrible from him, but from Conor Benn's side, he doesn't know that going in. And I think that, the emotions was a big part of the game plan, and he controlled that. He dealt with it. So I think that's a plus moving forward.
Are we in danger of being lazy, boys, about calling emotions a decision to be able to engage at certain times during the course of a fight? Because he controlled himself, knowing what was in front of him, and stuck to a game plan that Tony Sims had orchestrated because they'd seen perhaps the weaknesses in the first fight, and they wanted to make sure that Conor was able to execute in a different way. But isn't the idea of Conor Benn's ferocity and unleashing it at the right times, is emotions the right way to describe it, boys? Or is it simply just a bit of maturity?
It's a little bit of maturity, Simon, but also when you get into a fight, from round one just how strong the other guy is. So he maybe never felt threatened by Eubank, because he would have tested him physically. Leaned on him a little bit, started throwing a few shots, seeing how those shots, how Eubank responded to those shots, and he got the response because there was nothing coming back.
The thing as well, when you take a smack in the face, that brings the red mist on, and that makes you engage more. He wasn't getting caught. So there's nothing really coming back for him, so he could stay in sort of second, third gear. He looked sharp he looked really explosive as well. And he is explosive, that's how he fights, but there was probably just nothing coming back from Eubank.
But there were points in that fight where he caught Eubank, and you know yourself, guys, when you get your opponent and you hit him, and you know whether it's time to pick it up and go for it, or whether you hold back a little bit or whatever.
Sure.
He done that. He didn't take that. Like, the emotion sometimes can take over that for Conor Benn, where he catches him with a half a decent shot and thinks, oh, got him, jumps in. That's where you make the fundamental mistakes. He didn't do that. He sat back, he was picking his shots, and then that 12th round, he nearly got the job done. So when you're looking at that, you go, that's very calculated, and he showed me something that I've not seen from him before.
He probably also, there was rumours, obviously, that Eubank was struggling to make weight, right? His dad has been his champion, saying that from day one. My son can't do 160, and obviously Ben would have fed off of that, because once you know your opponent can't make weight and they're going to be weak, you feed off it. Psychologically, you feed off of that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us have listened to the ruminations about what happens next for Conor. Obviously, Eddie Hearn was making a lot of noise about shoehorning him in for a world title shot. But before we discuss it, let's have a listen to what Conor himself was saying post the fight.
I feel like I'm going to go home and cry. I feel like I'm going to go home and cry, yeah. Because it's just... Oh, man, it's been hard. Facing my first loss, coming back from adversity. It's things you got to do. As a man, you go through things in life and you don't know why, but you just have to keep fighting. Staying in shape, staying in the gym, turning up when you really don't want to turn up. Facing your own demons every single day. That's the hardest fight, really. You have to live in your head every single day. Getting in the ring for 36 minutes is no problem. I think for me, winning the WBC world title is heavy on my heart, heavy on my mind. Getting that WBC world title was the belt my dad won. It was the belt I would love to win. It's my dream. So for me to be one up on my dad with the Eubank Benn rivalry and also win the WBC world title, it'll be some moment for me.
Now, as we hear him say, and as he's mentioned on a number of occasions, and I can't be a hypocrite here initially by saying something different, because I've always advocated for Conor Benn fighting at 147, thinking that he should be fighting at that weight class and he might have a successful opportunity there. So that's why I was always in principle against the for cash fight with Eubank. But he's talked about fighting Mario Barras, he's talked about fighting Rollo Romero, he's talked about fighting Brian Norman. The only person he hasn't talked about is fighting Lewis Crocker, which has annoyed Lewis. Is he right in his analysis, besides the nostalgic look back towards his father's WBC belt and going after that, is he right, boys, to be targeting back at 147 now?
Well, Mario Barrios would be for me, the easiest option for him.
Agreed.
Out of the champions, of course. But the $1 million question is, look, he's not been at 147 for 4 years. He's built up, and he's not just put on weight, he's put on muscle mass as well. And to lose that weight, we've seen it with fighters in the past when they've gone up in weights. I think the Roy Jones Jr. is a classic example of that, going up to heavyweight. As soon as he come back down, he was never the same fighter again. And I think we're not talking about going down one weight division here. I think Conor's future, by the way, is at 154. Obviously not 160, but I think 154. Dropping down to 147 for me would be a bad mistake, because I think he'd lose the punch resistance, he'd lose the punch power, and you're talking about the fighters there that are, decent, and it would be a very difficult task for him to drop back to 147.
Muscle weighs more than fat, right? And he's bulked up, and he looks like a middleweight. So I don't know if he can. He probably won't be able to make 147. Spencer's right, maybe the 154, but all the champions at 154 are just as tasty at the ones at 147. So I think he's stuck a little bit. We all want to be world champions. We all want to, tick that box. But saying it's one thing, doing it's another. And I still feel there are levels to this game. I don't really think he's ready for a world title fight. That's just my own personal opinion.
Duke's just literally took the words out of my mouth. No, I'm not bashing Conor Benn, criticising Conor Benn, but this sort of expectation that he's just going to go in and beat the world champions now off the back of beating Chris Eubank is absurd. Is absurd.
I agree.
Lewis Crocker is the easiest fight to make, but does he beat Lewis Crocker? Because I don't think he does. And the other world champions, I don't think he beats. I agree with what you and Spencer saying. I think he'll struggle really bad to get back down to that weight, because he's had so long at this weight. And there's 2 fights in the middle when he came back after the tests was at 154, wasn't he? So he's going to find it really hard making 147. And he's obviously aged a little bit and grown. I don't mean aged a lot, by the way. He's aged a little bit, matured a little bit, shall we say, and filled out a bit. And he looked massive the other day.
Yeah.
And he looked really big back
about,
on him. He looked in good shape and looked strong.
The what would you do? Talking about, super welterweight, like Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis, you know, Sebastian Fundora. They're tough fights.
So what would you
really
do?
Tough.
I mean, Duke, he's got a tough. I mean, if he goes into the 147 weight class, with the exception of Barrios, he's got tough opposition in front of him. Maybe Lewis Crocker, with all due respect to Lewis, might be considered slightly easier than Brian Norman and Rolly Romero. But the fact is he's got a challenge on either weight class, and so he should have to win a world title. I mean, you shouldn't have it easy. No. Not everyone can fight Charles Martin, with due respect to Anthony Joshua, to win a world title. If you were in Conor's shoes, what would you be doing?
I would seriously consider the 154-pound division, you know, because he's not going to make welterweight and be strong. And he's certainly not a middleweight. You know, everybody knows, the world and his brother knows, he's beaten an absolute shell-shocked fighter in Chris Eubank Jr. That victory, I don't want to take nothing away from the boy, but it flatters him, you know, because he had nothing to beat, right? Now, to drop back down to 147, he then finds himself in the same position as Eubank was in being weight.
Ironically,
weakened. He's not going to be strong at the weight. As I said, muscle weighs more than fat. He'd have to train. He'd have to probably cut off half a leg to make the weight. The 154 weight division, where there's Virgil Ortiz and other good champions, good solid champions, I don't think Eubank's going to beat these guys.
Both of you guys have had to make weight, as I have as well, and we know that, you know, we know the ramifications if you make the weight and you don't get it right, and it's like. You are like what Chris Eubank Jr. was there, and I think dropping down to 147, I feel that he would be in that position. And there'd be nowhere to go with it.
My point of reference to making weight, Spencer, when I lost my first world title, I got to the weigh-in and I was a quarter of a pound overweight. It was at the Odeon Leicester Square in the West End. I was a quarter of a pound overweight. Do you know, I skipped for an hour to make weight. I still couldn't, even when we made the official weigh-in, I only made it at the second attempt. So I'd actually been skipping and shadow boxing for an hour and a half and made it at the second attempt. At the second attempt, I'd actually passed out, you know, because I was so dehydrated. So I really felt for Eubank, obviously, after seeing what he'd been through. It just took me right back to where I'd been. Yeah. So you can't keep boiling down and making weight and boiling down and making weight without having a real detrimental, real consequence.
I agree totally with you, and I know how tough it is. I've failed a weight, I failed one, I made every other one, I failed one, and the one that people talk about is the one that I failed, and it cost me financially and it cost me reputational wise. But this Chris Eubank was drained because of the weight narrative is also incorrect. He might have been affected by the way that he did the weight, but his weight weighing a pound light said he did well. And the rehydration the next day, making it comfortable, he said he did it okay. Okay, he's had to make it time and time again. I think it's like complaining about the weight, which is detracting from the fact that he's done.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing left there no more. And I said it before the fight. And it's fascinating because people are jumping on that saying, oh, he'll be okay at 154, 168.
No, he won't.
It's done.
No, he won't.
And there's no shame in that whatsoever. And people are saying he's not old because he's 36. His father retired at 32 and he was old when he retired.
But it's also fascinating.
After that hard
it's also fascinating given that we sat in this very studio and we were given this rousing introduction into the future of Chris Eubank by Bomac. And everyone kind of bought into it because they think this is a guy that's an elite trainer that's just worked with Terence Crawford and been part of that successful campaign, albeit Terence Crawford's talent is unique. So it makes it a slightly easier job to be a trainer of someone like Terence Crawford. And we were subscribing to the similar views that and being advocated for by Bomac that Chris Eubank wins a world title at 160. There was a lot of noise. I don't know what you guys thought, and I'm going to throw to a piece of VT in a minute with Dave Allen. But before I do that, some of the commentary on Saturday drove me insane. Some of the nature of the... I don't know what's happened to Adam Smith, whether he's suddenly bought into the fact he's the voice of boxing, but some of it was hysterical, and I really like Adam. It was over the top. And it appeared to me some of the observations, I like Tony as well, but some of the things that Tony was saying were just utter nonsense. And I know I'm really delving into an area that people I'll get smacked for, but some of the commentary that was being put out about this fight from some of the pundits was just ridiculous. And the reasons why I wanted to say that is because I want to throw to what Dave Allen has said, because this to me was a breath of fresh air against some of the nonsense I was listening to on Saturday night. Listen to Dave after the fight.
These are my honest thoughts, right? I think Conor Benn's sound, like I know him quite well. Eubank shot to bits, done, finished. Terrible. It was awful. It was terrible. I'm not a great fighter, but he was terrible by his standards. He was awful. He was terrible. He was shot to bits. His balance is gone. Every time he got hit in the head, he looked startled and looked like he didn't want to be there. His jab, he was snatching at it. He didn't want to get it. Was Conor Benn any better than the first time? We don't even know, really. I can't take anything away from it. Conor Benn come out. He had a bit.
He was more disciplined, wasn't he? He was more disciplined.
But it's easy to be disciplined with a. I'm disciplined on the bag. I go in there and I fall to bits. Someone starts hitting me back. I can't. Conor Benn, take nothing away from him. He got the job done. Well done. Fair play. I can't take anything away from it. He lost to a faded Eubank, and then he just beat a shot to bits one. That don't make that. He's not 147. He's not 147 champion elect on the back of that.
No,
Can he win a world title at 147 now, though?
Maybe, but the champions aren't. They're not A-level champions. They're like the B-level champions. Barrios, Crocker, they're very good fighters, but they're not great fighters. But I'm still not sure he'll beat him. I don't think Conor Benn's a fantastic boxer. Nigel Benn, 1990, Nigel Benn would have flattened Chris Eubank Jr. in one round tonight. That's the honest truth.
Yeah, again, but it's unfair, isn't it, to compare both of them lads to the previous.
It's not unfair on Eddie Hearn saying this man's going to go to 147, smash everyone to bits.
No, he's not.
He's not that good.
No, but that's Eddie Hearn's job, isn't it, as the salesman, as the promoter.
I'm just telling things how I see it.
That's why you're here.
There's no point in me standing here and saying it was amazing. It weren't. It was.
But he's got the strength and the tenacity and the belief to be a world champion at 147.
I sold 8,500 tickets at Sheffield. Not because I'm a great fighter, because people like me. They've done 70,000 in here tonight because of the story with the dads. Yeah. Amazing. I for him, met loads of money. What we saw in there tonight weren't world-class boxing.
No.
Weren't even close. Not even close. Wasn't even close. Not close. And they're saying he's 147 elect champion. Not even close to being world title.
No, I think we agree with that.
Poor.
But
both of them weren't great. Eubank was terrible. Benn didn't do anything amazing. He just beat a shell of an old man up.
What that is authentic and unfiltered.
Mm-hmm.
What that is.
Yeah.
And that's a real, I think, proper analysis. It's interesting how narratives change, isn't it? And I don't want to dig up the past. I'm very pleased for Conor. I know it meant a lot to his family, and I really respect Nigel and like him a lot. And I'm delighted that they've won, with no malice intended towards Chris Eubank or his father. But there is a narrative that 2 or 3 years ago, Conor was a pantomime villain, and no one has yet answered the question as to how he managed to get out from underneath and why we haven't seen the findings of that particular case, because it's his gift, and no one appears to have been sued for the loss of earnings as a result of spurious claims. So all of that's slightly curious, and the fact that Conor is now the people's champion is a strange narrative, but notwithstanding it, fair play to him. Brutal honesty from Dave Allen, I think right on the money, and dialed down the hysteria. And of course, Eddie's job is to hype up the opportunity and create an outcome. There's no part of me that thinks Conor should be a shoehorn in for a world title fight at 147. But do we think with Conor that we've got, at some point, a future world champion in the making? Well, because I did once.
Listen, time will tell. I think that, the kid is improving all the time. But you're talking about, like, massive jumps up. You know, you go, let's see Conor in, with someone of some sort of substance at that weight division.
If he gets matched right, then he can win a world title,
let's say, look, we talk about Jack Catterall. Jack Catterall sort of gets overlooked a lot. Let's see Conor Benn in with Jack Catterall. There's your fight. Then you'll go to, is he going to be world class?
There's no chance he takes that fight, is there?
Yeah, of course there's not. No. Of course there's not, because they're going to try and boycott that to go on for a world title against one of these champions, whether that's Lewis Crocker, whether it's Mario Barrios, or one of those guys. He's called out Devin Haney and all those guys. Don't go near Devin Haney, by the way.
I think that's the issue, Spencer, why he's boycotting it. He hasn't won the British title. He's just boycotted all of that. Bypassed all of that, should I say, not boycotted. And he's going to try and go in straight at the deep end for the world title. But there's an old saying in boxing, there's an old sort of code in boxing that you have to pay your dues on the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And paying your dues is usually going for them titles. And I'm not just saying because a guy had one or we had one. It's not about that. It would be a good sort of barometer or yardstick to see where he is, and then if you're going for them, well, you've done everything here. But domestically in Britain, there's the Catterall fight. There's other fights there which are very good fights.
But a risk reward on that.
But it's risk reward.
And Catterall, with respect to Conor, in my view, for what it's worth, Catterall would box his head off.
He probably would.
Catterall's a very, very good fighter.
And he's proven, though, isn't it, at this level?
Look, Jack Catterall had a good win over Echo Esserman, and it was a good fight.
It was a good win.
It was a brilliant.
It was a great fight. It was the best fight of the night, by the way.
Echo Esserman's in that mix as well, but the point is that, Conor Benn's at this stage now where they're going to want to leapfrog all of that, take away those risky fights to go for one or manoeuvre his way into a world title shot.
Or orchestrate another Eubank outcome by fighting Harlem.
This is what I'm saying. What do you do with him with Conor at the moment? Because on paper, Esselman and Benn is a really good fight. If you take the name away, take all the Nigel Benn's son and all the history of what he's done. Now listen, it's difficult to say all this without bashing Conor Benn. He's beat whoever's in front of him, and it's not his fault that Eubank wasn't there anymore. And it was a mega show, and it was a nostalgia, and it all sold. And I was at the first one and loved it. And I watched the second one. I was glued to watching the second one because I wanted to see what happened. And after one round, it was clear to see.
Evident, yeah.
It's not his fault that he is where he is at the moment, and he's absolutely smashed it with the payments that he's had.
Yep.
But he's got to now try and maximise what he can achievement-wise, and he will want to do that because he's a young, hungry lad. But whether he can do that or not is what we're debating. And can he jump in for a world title at 147? That's the question.
But Eubank Sr. had been saying for as long as I can remember, his son can't make 160. He has to absolutely boil down, near enough kill himself to make the weight. And that's exactly what you saw at the weekend.
Duke, I think that was evident, and I think we've seen that in his last couple of fights. And there'll be a lot of talk about him making 160 since 2019. You go, but as we get older, and you guys know better than anyone again, it's harder to maintain that weight. And we saw the struggles that he was having there, and you go like, that takes its toll on the body. And at what cost? Has that cost him his career moving forward?
But let's talk about Chris Eubank Jr. because obviously the other side of this conversation is we don't want to denigrate Conor Benn's achievements because neither did Chris Eubank in the post-fight presser. Interestingly, he did on his own, which was interesting given his father seemed to want to pop up all the time when it was before the fight. I made the observation again from the position of not the same value as the opinions that you give, but that he wasn't fit for purpose. I mean, a lot was made of the weight. Spencer makes the argument, and rightly so, that this guy's fought at this weight since 2018, since 2018 was the last time he fought a super middleweight. It wasn't against George Groves, wasn't it? And people said he was too small at that weight. You've got Bomac in here, his trainer. When we all know that people talk in forked tongues in terms of press conferences or media stuff to be able to get an outcome that they want, absolutely denying the fact that he should be fighting at 168, was going to win a world title at 160 and make this weight easy. And with the problem the first time was it wasn't managed properly. Was it weight, or was it just Father Time has caught up with him, or was it the consequences of the fight that he was in first time round has drained so much alongside the weight, alongside age, and all those three factors have just brought you to the end of the road and go, with due respect to Chris Eubank, that's why we're in this position and that's why the fight went the way it did?
I think the weight has speeded up the process, and Father Time has now caught up with him, because what I was looking at there was you're looking at Chris Eubank Jr. Not only was his timing completely out and he looked slow and sluggish, you couldn't see the shots coming back again. The coordination was gone, and that's a key factor when you know a fighter's a shot fighter. You see his legs are not working together, and you look at all these little bits in a fighter and you go, that's a fighter that is got old overnight.
I agree totally. Them signs were there 3 fights ago for me, 4 fights ago.
But
this is what I'm saying.
Against Liam.
In the last fight, if you're getting caught and hurt off Conor Benn in the last fight by a welterweight who should never be catching or having asking questions of you, he got stiffened up a couple of times. This is the same fellow who took the shot who we just said off George Groves, who's a massive puncher, super middleweight. Arthur Abraham, Korobov, he's been in there with massive punches and never been affected. I've sparred him. I know how tough he is and durable he is. He's a tough man, durable man, but he's being hurt by Conor Benn, and it's flattering Conor Benn in the sense that he's a massive puncher. But I said, I'm not criticising Conor. All he can do is beat who's in front of him. But the punch resistance is gone, and that comes with age. Listen, it does come with weight as well. That's the difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does happen with weight as well. But I think
he's 36.
It's age.
He's 36, and when you can't pull the trigger when you're 36 because you're shot worn now and you can't make weight, and it's also the build-up that he's had into making weight. Over the weeks and the months that he's been trying to get his weight down and drag down, do your whole body just goes really slow? It's almost like you're going to slow motion.
But it ages you, Duke, as well.
Yeah, you walk slow, you talk slow, and you just can't. It's just gone.
I mean, a lot of people were saying that the moment they saw the weigh-in on Friday, a lot of money went onto Conor Benn because he didn't onto Conor Benn because he didn't look. He didn't look great. I thought when I saw him come into the ring, besides looking like that outfit he was wearing was a cross between Frank Lucas and Frank Spencer, I looked at him and thought, I'm not sure about that. He doesn't look great at this particular weight. He looks so thin and almost emaciated. During the fight, it was heard. I mean, obviously, we've now assessed it from the first round. We looked at Chris Eubank, went, first round tells you all you need to know. But beyond that, he was heard saying in the rounds, tell me when it's the last minute of a round. What's that telling people?
that he wants to catch a judge's eye. He recognises...
Just nick around.
Yeah, just nick the rounds. Just nick the rounds. Because, you know, sometimes with certain judges, if the rounds are quite close, that last 30 seconds can be so important. It catches the judge's eye. And if he's indecisive about which way he's going, he goes, yeah, another round for you,
I think
that was the game plan for him.
Sorry, Spence, one thing about the corners, mate. I don't know whether anyone heard it, but after, I think it was 6 rounds, Bolmack said to me, "How you feeling?" And Eubank just said, like, and I thought... He's done.
Yeah.
And I knew anyway, you know by what you're watching, but if you can go back on the footage, you'll find it. But at the end of round 6, I was watching on the telly back home. I wasn't like Spencer in the Frank Lucas seats, to be honest with you. I was at home watching it, and
yeah,
you can hear it clear as day. How you feeling?
And all that.
And he says, like, and it's the way he says it. It's like he says as if to say, you know, I'm feeling, and
I'm done,
that's a big, that's a big worrying sign.
Well, we can ruminate about it, but let's hear from Chris himself in the post-fight press conference.
From that first round, I realized that I was mistaken. But it's okay. You know, I'm a fighter. This is what I do. Regardless of, you know, the dangers and the risk, you know, we go to war. That's what we do. I tried my best. Conor Benn put on a hell of a fight. He had a great performance. He did everything that was asked of him. And I congratulate him for his performance tonight. You guys saw what I was in there tonight. Yeah, I thought that, you know, once those bright lights hit and that round went and, you know, I was in there, that, you know, I'd find something. And I tried hard, but it wasn't there. And Conor was strong and he was fast and he was tough. And yeah, congratulations to him.
Last one from me. You sound like a man who might be done boxing. Is that something you're considering tonight?
We're not talking about that right now.
First of all, I thought that was a very honest and respectful and magnanimous and gracious press conference. I thought he was very stylish and sophisticated in his thinking and didn't want to take anything away from Conor Benn and gave all the credit to Conor Benn. He talked about having to go to hell and back to get into the ring with, my understanding is an underlying medical condition. This might be just gossip and rumour from the industry, but it's from a relatively decent source, that there's an underlying medical condition, whether it's an inflated level of IBS or something of that nature, which has caused him to be impacted upon. Are we now saying, and I hate to do this, but it's part of the conversation that everyone will have, it's like, is a manager going to get sacked? Is it time for Chris to hang up his gloves, Duke?
Absolutely. He's got nothing more to prove, not to himself. And, you know, 10 million quid can make you feel very good, you know, after when all the dust has settled and you look at your bank balance and you go, you know what, it was actually worth it. You will always struggle to make weight, or you always try and do weight while you're winning. But then when you stop winning, that's the time when you question yourself. And that's when you know, I don't want to swear, but just when you know, if everything hits the fan,
the fit hits the shan.
Yeah, the fit hits the shan, and that's when you really, that's when you question yourself. You keep doing it, you keep dragging to make weight because you're winning, and all of a sudden you don't win, and then all the questions start coming out: the this, to that, why, the ifs, the buts, the maybes, and that's what we're getting now.
He basically said that there in his own words, didn't he?
Yeah,
He's basically
absolutely,
saying that in his own words, and he brings obviously other things. We're not talking about that now about retirement, but that's how it is for the fighter. And I don't know whether listen, Spence, you were unfortunate you never got to experience it because yours was cut short to another horrendous season. But on mine and on other people's, you see it and you get it in and you just think after the round, it's just not there no more.
It's just not there.
And you're old and it happens overnight, and it's difficult to explain to people who don't really go through that. But in the gym, you feel good.
Do you know what it is,
Everything's clicking, but on the ring in the night, it's done, and it just happens.
I think a fighter is the first one to know it, but the last one to admit it, because you know when the body's going down. You know when you can see it, you can see the deterioration, and they're like, one more fight. And Chris would have truly believed he would deliver on the night.
Yeah.
And I think it became evident when that first bell rang. Like he said there, he was very, very honest in his assessment.
Billy Graham, unbelievable trainer, always had a great saying. And fighters are the best liars to themselves, and they lie to you. You have to lie to yourself all the time. I'm going to make the weight. I am fit. I am going to beat.
But
I'm
is it
not
believable?
And this and
I mean, you made a comment the other day, and I picked up on it on a show of me and
Was
Jim.
it a good one?
Probably not. But notwithstanding that, it was worth dwelling upon because then we can pick it apart and get the educated opinions. But ultimately, there was that this wouldn't be a secret that ultimately this performance didn't come out of nowhere. I.e., the fact that Chris said the lights came on, I went in there, I thought I could do it, and I couldn't. That wouldn't have been a surprise. It would have been evident in sparring. It would have been evident because obviously you were quite surprised at the robustness of Bomac's decision. We're the bigger fighter.
Yeah.
We're the bona fide middleweight. We're going to meet fire with fire. We're going to meet in the middle of the ring, and he's going to see what a bigger man really looks like.
Yep.
That was the underlying shtick.
Yep.
So this wouldn't have been a surprise to these guys, would it? It wouldn't have been a surprise to Bomac on Saturday night. It wouldn't have been a surprise to Chris Eubank. They knew what they had in the tank.
Yeah, it might have been a surprise to Eubank because obviously Bomac's doing all the talking.
Right.
And, when the bell goes, he takes a step back, Eubank takes a step forward. Eubank knew full well, I promise you this, he knew full well he couldn't pull the trigger anymore going into that fight.
Through that training camp, the cracks would have appeared. It wouldn't have just got old overnight on that ring walk. That doesn't happen. Like, he would have felt that in sparring. That he would have felt that in his training. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they sold the dream and he was going to do this and he's going to go and meet fire with fire and bully the smaller guy and all of that bullshit. But the reality was they would have known going in there that he was not at his
Paul
best.
said it right earlier. He lied to himself.
This is what I'm saying.
You do. You lie to yourself.
But did he lie to himself or did he lie to the public?
I don't want to be. I don't want to be the dead extravagant one on the end and the controversial one and have the headlines tomorrow where all Paul said this. It was there to see 4 or 5 fights ago. Yeah. It was the writing was on the wall then. And listen, again, my brother Liam's had a lot of stick for how he was in the rematch against Eubank. But the first thing he said, he's sitting there crying after saying he's done, and I've just made him look $1 million. He's absolutely finished. He's got nothing left no more. But then the fight after it, he didn't really fight anyone up until Conor Benn, and with all due respect, a welterweight and a light middleweight, it was Zarafa or something, I can't remember his name. So they're not going to really bring that out in him, but Conor Benn did in the rematch and made him look like what I've seen for the last 2 years, let's say.
So to some extent, the public got sold a bit of a pup.
Yeah.
Well,
They did, didn't they?
Yeah.
100%.
Which is kind of what I was saying for the course of this fight and getting ridiculed and goaded by it. But notwithstanding that, look, entertainment and theatre. What we didn't see in theatre and saw in real quality was the fight between Jack Catterall and Eko Usman, which I thought was a standout fight. I thought Adam Azim's performance was a great performance earlier on against Kurt Scooby.
Yeah.
But I thought that Jack Catterall's performance in that fight and the fight itself was a great fight, wasn't it?
Very workmanlike. Catterall has been accused of being
workmanlike,
boring
wasn't
and playing it safe in the past. But I think that performance against Eko Usman, he met fire with fire against Eko and beat him at his own game. He showed that there was a lot of spite in his punches, and he boxed different to me. And actually, I liked the new, improved Jack Catterall in many ways, because I go like that style of fighter, Eko Usman, you thought Jack would just hold back, pick him off, and play it a little safe like he does, and sort of like try and chip away. But I thought that was a first-class performance, and the finish, by the way, was sensational.
See, Catterall's world class. There's no doubt about it. And what he needs now is that step up. He needs that world title challenge to see just how good he really is. And I believe we're looking. He could become world champion.